Hi everyone, this is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just before 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, October 6th. Coming on with the latest this afternoon about a rapidly strengthening Hurricane Milton here over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. We've seen Milton rapidly intensify today. Maximum sustained winds are now up to about 85 miles per hour, making Milton a hurricane. The center of Milton right now is just over 800 miles to the west-southwest of Tampa, and Milton's moving off right now to the east at 7 miles per hour. Unfortunately, we are expecting Milton to continue to rapidly intensify, and we are expecting Milton to become a major hurricane and likely a powerful Category 4 hurricane over the southern Gulf of Mexico as we go from Monday into Tuesday. And then we're expecting Milton to turn more towards the northeast and east-northeast with an increase in forward speed, bringing the core of the very dangerous hurricane over the west coast of Florida during the day Wednesday, across the Florida Peninsula, and out into the western Atlantic by Thursday. You can see that much of the state of west coast of Florida is under the threat of seeing the landfall of the core of Milton during the day on Wednesday, everywhere from up north of Tampa through the Tampa Bay region down to Sarasota, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers. Everyone in this region is at risk of seeing significant life-threatening impacts from Milton beginning as early as Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning, and then spreading across the Florida Peninsula and onto the east coast of the Florida Peninsula during the day on Wednesday. So there is certainly the potential for life-threatening storm surge inundation across much of the Florida west coast, including some areas that were recently affected by Hurricane Helene and are quite vulnerable here to any additional storm surge impacts. But we're likely to see the issuance of both storm surge and hurricane watches for much of the Florida west coast early Monday morning. In terms of the wind impacts, we are expecting Milton to be a hurricane as it moves across the state of Florida, bringing the potential for hurricane impacts across interior portions of the state, including risk along the I-4 corridor over to the Daytona Beach, Cape Canaveral area. Also the potential for some life-threatening storm surge inundation along the Florida East Coast as well. Let's look at preparedness timelines. This is the time of arrival of tropical storm force winds, expecting those winds to begin in the early morning hours along the Florida west coast and then spreading across the peninsula during the day. The chance of hurricane force winds is broadly spread all the way from north of Tampa up towards the Big Bend region all the way down to the Naples area. So everyone here in this area needs to be preparing as if they could experience that life-threatening storm surge inundation and those dangerous winds. You see the risk of hurricane conditions extends across much of the interior of the Florida Peninsula as well as along the east coast from just to the east of Lake Okeechobee, the Treasure Coast, up through the Cape Canaveral area and up to the north closer to St. Augustine and Jacksonville. So again, we're likely to see hurricane watches, tropical storm watches, storm surge watches issued for much of this area on Monday. In terms of rainfall impacts, we've already had widespread heavy rainfall occurring across portions of the Florida Peninsula, the Florida Keys today. This is the current radar. Again, with that heavy rainfall already occurring, the combination of this rainfall and the overall rainfall associated with Milton is going to result in widespread rainfall totals of 5 to 10 inches, with isolated amounts as high as 15 inches across portions of the Florida Peninsula and the Florida Keys through Wednesday night. Right now, the area that we're looking at for the highest overall rainfall totals is sort of in that I-4 corridor from Tampa over to Orlando, Melbourne, Daytona Beach, up towards Palm Coast and St. Augustine. The risk of flash flooding, this level 3 out of 4 risk you see highlighted in red here for Wednesday, includes much of that area. Also includes Ocala up towards Gainesville, including the Jacksonville metro area as well. There's a risk of locally considerable flash and urban flooding as well as moderate to major river flooding in this area. So let's think about evacuation zones. If you're along the Florida west coast and you live in a storm surge evacuation zone or a storm surge prone area, make sure you know your zone and you know where your home is within that zone. The Florida evacuation zones are categorized by letters from A all the way to the letter F. You can go to floridadisaster.org/KNOW to find out if your home is in a storm surge evacuation zone. And if it is, and you're asked to leave by local officials, please do so when those orders are given. You don't have to drive hundreds of miles to get to a safe location. You just have to drive tens of miles to get out of that storm surge zone to a shelter or to another safe place where you can ride out the storm. Let's talk a little bit more about preparedness. When a storm threatens, you want to protect your home, Cover your windows, secure your loose items and your doors, determine what your sheltering options are. Do you have special needs? Do you have pets that you need to take care of? Think about that now. Also have your go bag ready. If you're going to be asked to evacuate, make sure you have any medicine you need, supplies, food, water that you're going to need to take with you and be comfortable. Help your neighbors and relatives, especially those who are vulnerable in your community, to get ready for the storm, and then follow those evacuation orders if you've been given them. So just to wrap up, let's hit the key messages, 3 or 4 most important points for Milton here. Milton's expected to be a major hurricane when it reaches the west coast of the Florida Peninsula midweek. Don't focus too much on the exact details of the tracker intensity forecast. We're still about 3 days away from any potential landfall, so that track is going to shift around. The intensity category may change, but just keep in mind this is going to be a storm that's going to be growing in size and bringing impacts to much of the Florida Peninsula. There's the potential for life-threatening storm surge and damaging winds for portions of the west coast of the Florida Peninsula beginning early Wednesday. Storm surge and hurricane watches will likely be issued for portions of these areas early Monday morning. And again, the heavy rainfall will impact portions of Florida from Monday out ahead of Milton through Monday. And then with the approach of Milton, that heavy rainfall will extend through Wednesday night and bring the potential for pretty significant flooding as well. So please come back here to Hurricanes.gov at the National Hurricane Center for more information on Milton as we go through the week. You can find information on the local impacts in your area from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. We'll be back with you throughout the event here. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan at the National Hurricane Center.